Welcome everyone to the final installation of our RAICA 2020-21 Virtual Summit Series. It has been a packed series with, I think we've had probably about 6 webinars and 6 messages from clergy or so, maybe a little less, maybe 5. They're all available on our website if anyone would like to go back and check on some of the topics. And I'll say we saved the best for last. So this is our gardening gala. And before I introduce our speakers for tonight, I wanted to just draw everyone's attention to our RAICA website. If you'd like to find out more information about RAICA, please visit www.raica.net. That's RAICA.net. RAICA stands for Rochester Area Interfaith Climate Action. We are a group of individuals and organizations of faith in the Rochester metropolitan area seeking to create a meaningful response to climate change. By working together, we seek to share resources, leverage our strengths, and magnify our positive impact. You can become a site member up here in the top of our website and stay in touch with us, receive our newsletter, and have access to our blogs and our member forum, which is our idea exchange, where you can share ideas and ask the community for help and best practices. And you can also check us out on social media on our Facebook page or our Twitter. I don't think we have a lot of action on Twitter. So please do continue to follow us, and we hope for even more stronger and year of even more growth next year without the COVID limitations. So with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker, and Reverend Cindy, if you want, you can go ahead and take over the screen. So our first speaker is Reverend Cindy, and she's from St. Mark's and St. John's Episcopal Church. I'll let her tell you all about herself and the church and their work with the Eden Gardens.
Thanks so much for having me. And thank you for the introduction, Jackie. So I am Cindy Rasmussen. I'm an Episcopal priest here in Beechwood, in the Beechwood neighborhood, and I've been here at St. Mark's and St. John's for almost 13 years. So I just wanted to share just a few things about kind of our journey, and look forward to answering any questions and certainly taking suggestions and comments from you as well. So so I just have a few slides to share and can talk a little bit about our experience. When I first began here at St. Mark's and St. John's, we were, I think, in a position very similar to a lot of faith communities, in that our numbers had already dropped considerably, and so we were really struggling to kind of keep our doors open. And so one of the challenges that I found myself in with the leadership here is we really didn't know what was going to be next, and I'm super candid about that with folks, because I think it's important that particularly clergy leadership of congregations knows that it's kind of to no fault of our own sometimes when we find ourselves in situations where congregations might be too small to sustain kind of traditional ministries. And so we went into kind of this period of experimentation, and I described this as kind of trying to throw everything up against the wall and see what sticks. And we failed a lot. But during that period of time, we stumbled on community gardening, and this was actually something about 8 years ago that we had hooked up with FoodLink, and at that point they had gotten a 5-year state grant to do some community gardening, and we decided that that would be a good idea. We started a number of raised beds on our church property, And since then, we've grown to seven community gardens in and around the Beechwood neighborhood. Most of those lots are city lots. We've taken advantage of the urban ag work group, worked with city council to be able to provide 5-year leases for folks that were interested in doing that. And that way we can invest in the property, knowing that we don't have to re-up every year. So we have 5-year leases on each one of those lots. I think the city requires that you carry your own insurance on those. So that's one thing that can be a barrier for entry for some smaller places. But and as I'm talking, if there's any I like to tell folks we're an open book. So whatever information that we can share with you about kind of from the smallest things that we've learned to larger pieces in terms of navigating, we're certainly welcome, happy to do that. And I can provide my contact information, and I'm happy to just do one-on-one kind of share information after our time together too. So in 2013, we started to grow at, and can you see my kind of cursor here on the screen? Okay, fantastic. So we're right here. St. Mark's and St. John's. We started by going to this lot over here, which is in the Merchants Road, 622. Then we kind of jumped over to Rosewood, which is just down the street from the church. That's now our children's garden, because we noticed that a lot of kids were hanging out in that lot. So we wanted to make that a safe space. A couple of years ago, we received a pretty sizable grant from FoodLink as well as the Community Foundation, and we were able to launch. This is actually a double lot over here. We call that our Denver training garden. So we have the Summer of Opportunity teens that come and use these 2 lots in particular for job training. And then we picked up this lot here, which is at the corner of Denver and Parcells. That was at the same time. We have a garden over here on East Main that is, it's a private kind of partnership with a parishioner that has, we funded a hoop house so we can extend our growing season. And today we brought in, I don't know how many pounds of lettuce that immediately goes out to our food shelf folks to increase the nutritional value of what we're able to get out to people in the neighborhood. So how we've set this up is a little bit different because we've continued to stay with the model that FoodLink had kind of given us the idea for early on, which basically was, we have garden captains for each one of our gardens. And then they manage their own kind of volunteer group. So we get, request for if folks want to volunteer one time or a lot of times or groups. We kind of take that on as the church and then hand that information out to the garden captains. And we just, how we've set that up is each captain has 1 day a week and a particular time where they made the commitment that they're going to be at the gardens. And that way we have times throughout the week, and usually one of those can fit people's schedules. So we have some evening stuff, some day stuff. So we've harvested and distributed since the inception of the program, around 2,500 pounds of food since 2014, which we've gotten, and that's that's what we've been able to keep track of and weighed. There's a lot of stuff that walks off, which is a great thing because all of our gardens are community gardens. So anybody that lives, you know, in the neighborhood that wants to come and harvest and use the produce that are in the gardens, they're more than welcome to do that. We don't have fences around any of our gardens. It's kind of if you see something that looks good to you, we encourage people to wait till it's ripe. That's awesome. But other than that, to take it and enjoy it. So the 25,000 pounds is what we've actually harvested, not necessarily what people have had that have come and taken the from actually harvested. We call it private harvesting when they harvest themselves. So emergency food distribution for the past 35 years, St. Mark's and St. John's has had a food shelf. They were, it was monthly for a long time, and about a year and a half, 2 years ago, it might even be longer than that now, we switched to weekly. And so when the pandemic hit, we were already kind of in the routine of providing food weekly. And then we saw the need for emergency food delivery. And so we started delivering to every zip code throughout Rochester and the suburbs 3 times a week. Worked with social workers and agencies, and through the United Way portal, we're able to access volunteers to kind of make that happen. So our produce that we get both from FoodLink as well as our own harvests goes into the emergency food delivery bags, as well as what people pick up on Wednesday mornings at our food shelf. We also have a farm stand, which you can see this picture up in the top hand right, on the second week of July through about the middle of September. And people can come and get their produce, as well as we supplement our own offerings with some local growers for like fruit and things like that we don't yet grow. So we have, and we sell it for kind of next to nothing. One of the things that we're expanding into this year is honeybees. So we're actually going to be putting honeybees on the roof of the church. So we're hoping to be able to offer honey this summer at the farm stand, and we have we're looking forward to getting into things like preserving vegetables and all that good stuff too, which can be part of the soup training program. And so just some additional things. We have 2 sites that we have kind of multiple compost bins. You can see in this center section that there's buckets that neighborhood folks can pick up. They can put their food waste in there, and then once it's full, drop it off at our garden at 1199 Culver and pick up a fresh bucket. And if they then want to have some of the compost once it's ready, they have access to that. We just we turn it and try to create some good some black gold. So you can see this picture of Javion, and I'm forgetting the young woman's name, that were both members of our soup program last year, putting together that compost bin. And Javion actually is employed now with us 5 hours a week doing projects in the church, and he's actually going to help us with the soup program. So it's awesome. You know, not only have we been able to provide training for young folks, but identify talent, and then hopefully help them network, get into schools, as well as have kind of network within the larger community for potential jobs. let's see, what else do we have? So some other pictures, fun pictures to share. This is the garden up on the left at the church. This middle area is 1199 Culver Road. That's one of the most recent gardens that we and lots that we now have. There was just an eyesore of a building that was there with some real health concerns associated with it. The city raised that, and then we were able to put beds in, and you can see kind of in the back here, we have children's picnic table as well as an adult picnic table in the back. You can also see this little green structure. That's where we keep the compost buckets. So if you're interested in composting, you can just go to 1199, drive up, grab a bucket, and get started. So there's nothing. One of the things that we've tried to do is kind of decentralize our organizations. So if people are interested in doing things, they certainly don't need to get permission from anybody. They can just literally dig in and help. You can see over here on the right, this is one of our soup classes. This gentleman here is a former teacher at Cornell in growing, and has taught kids from the science of growing, and we've learned all sorts of things from him. On the bottom right, you can see this is our 12 by 25 shed that we use in the summer for kind of the training center, and the students come and hang out there. It was painted by a young woman who lives on Melville, which is the street adjacent to this, and she's just amazing. Chloe Smith, just amazing artist. On the bottom center is kind of the beginning of our children's garden. So I just wanted to kind of put a picture there. We have, before the pandemic, we had some groups from Hillside as well as Starbridge that came and helped regularly in the gardens. And so this is a picture up here of some folks that came to help. We have free little libraries that we try to access to give folks access to books and keep those stocked. So the gardens had started out as kind of places where we could provide food for folks because we saw the need. But what's happened is there's been really kind of this evolution, and we've recognized that what started as a place just to give food has actually created these really cool places where we can provide education, and not just provide education, but receive education. Because I think for every person that's gotten, the vegetable that I think of most is collards. For every person that's come and gotten collards, and I've been around, there's a distinct recipe for each time. It seems like every family has a different recipe for how to make collards. So I have gotten a lot of education about recipes and just how families remember and have stories around growing, which is just fun for me. There's a spiritual connection, certainly to the land and creation, and just building relationships with people. I often say very few people will stop and talk to me about God. Just about everybody will stop and talk to me about how to grow a tomato. So it's a great way to make connections with people, and it's really, I started by talking about how we were really a dying community 13 years ago, and it is all because of the gardens that we are in the position that we are today, because it basically turned our community inside out. So we are outside. I'm outside far more than I'm inside. And it's just made us a much more vibrant place. And it's made my job much more interesting. I would much rather be outside talking to people than hanging out behind a computer, especially in the middle of the pandemic, right? It's also a place where we've been able to provide job training, like I've mentioned a couple of different times. It provides a space for community gathering and recreation. There is nothing better for me than to, I'll be leaving work. It'll be like 5:30 and I'll go past one of our gardens and a few people are hanging out, at the picnic table, having a conversation, or kids running around at our garden. Like that, that is awesome for me. I just love to see that. Um, so the other thing that I just wanted to underscore is how important volunteers have been. I get a number of religious leaders that are asking me about, like, how do we find volunteers? How do we get volunteers? Because it's super hard to kind of sustain. Um, so what my experience at community gardening before we had started is like you get people that are really excited this time of year and they launch the garden, and then it comes to August and you go by the community garden and it's like, one person that's tried and true that's standing there with a hose and really frustrated that no other volunteers have shown up. And the cool thing about, at least for us, is we haven't had that experience. And I think in large part because, and I'd love to say that it was intentional on my part and brilliant leadership, but we just kind of fell into this. We ended up linking up with our colleges and universities in the area, and their community connection groups, as well as other kind of volunteer groups. And then we figured out how to leverage those relationships in a way that was going to be a win-win. So you can see here these pictures. The bottom left is a work day that we had 3 weeks ago. It's a fraternity from RIT. They told us they were going to bring 15 people and 35 showed up. I mean, it's just blew my mind. I was trying to find projects for them to do all morning because there were too many of them. We had too many volunteers. So down here, I'm sitting in one of our children's chairs. And this is just like, this is a little orientation that, we give before volunteers start. So they get a sense of kind of the connectedness to the community, that it's about the food, but it's about having conversations with people. So I tell people, if your job today that we give you is to move mulch or compost or build beds, and somebody from the neighborhood comes up and wants to talk to you, or is interested in finding out more about what's going on, stop whatever you're doing, put the shovel down and have the conversation with people, because that's the most important thing that we do. This is the entrance to our children's garden. This was the United Way Day of Caring last Thursday. I still can't walk, but the kids had a great experience. So this was actually, we had somehow, I think it's the grace of God, connected with Bloomfield High School like 3-4 years ago. And we just all fell in love with each other. And so this year they brought high school kids. I think there was about 15 high school kids, and then 10 to 15 elementary 5th graders. They linked the 5th grader up with their mentor, their high school mentor, and the two of them worked together as a team throughout the day. So so it was great kind of leadership training for the high school kids. And we did painted a fence at our Denver training garden, which they did a beautiful job with. They put a compost, one of those 3-bay compost things together, and figured out how to do that. So here's some kids with a drill and painting, and they had a fabulous time. So what I wanted to kind of put out there, kind of in closing to you all, is If you have a group that's interested in having a volunteer experience, what we've done over the last few months is customize volunteer experiences. So if your group is interested in kind of faith and food and learning more about kind of the historical connection between faith and food in cultures around the world, and those pieces, what we do is different orientations, right? So if you choose option one, then the first 20 minutes to a half an hour when we sit down, we'll talk specifically about kind of the historical connection between faith, food, and cultures around the world. And then you go out, you have the experience in the neighborhood and actually hands-on, and then we do a short debrief with you after, depending on how much time you have. The second option is around food justice, learning about food justice and why it's important for us to know about issues around that. Also, pieces about becoming familiar with Black and Indigenous led food justice organizations. So if people are interested in that, how to connect and learn more, and resources that might be available. And then the third option is healing the world, learning about trauma-informed community building and engagement. So that's kind of where our energy is right now, is to continue to educate and learn from other people's experiences and integrate that somehow. If you're interested in kind of learning more about anything that we've been up to, like I said before, feel free to reach out to me. I've got our email address right here, stmarksandstjohns.org. We have a website with our volunteer schedule if you're interested in helping out. Sometimes helping out and finding out about kind of how we do things and organize things is helpful for then somebody to just kind of acts as kind of a catalyzing experience, so you can go out and kind of do your own thing and know that if you run into any challenges that you can kind of, we're happy to brainstorm, problem solve, all that good stuff. So
Reverend Cindy, thank you so
yeah,
much. I think we're running
absolutely
late on time, so
I'm sorry
I need
about
to
that.
cut you off, but it
Yeah.
sounds wonderful. So I think we will go to our next speaker, Megan Meyer, who is a sustainable landscaper and also a floral and vegetable gardener as well, and is connected with the Unitarian Church. And you're muted.
While Megan gets her talk ready and gets her slides up, maybe we can get the email address. So I actually typed the website incorrectly. So stmarksandstjohns.org is the website, I think. Is there an email contact that's available also? Or maybe you could type it in, Reverend Cindy? Awesome, thank you. All right, so we have a few questions, but I think for the sake of time, we'll save them for the end and let Megan take it away.
Okay, thank you so much. And that was a totally awesome program you're running, Reverend Cindy. I spoke with you probably several years back, and I'm totally in awe of all that you've been doing in the city. So anyway, I am a gardener with a background in landscape design and plant propagation, and also love nature. I am also, let me see if I can forward, here we go. The chairperson of the Landscape and Memorial Garden Committee at the First Unitarian Church of Rochester. And I guide our committee on best practices for caring for our church grounds and advise members on appropriate plant material for memorial trees. And I'll share some of what we're doing over there on the grounds and how we educate our members. The Unitarian Universalist congregations affirm and promote 7 principles which we hold as strong values and moral guides. And we live out these principles within a living tradition of wisdom and spirituality drawn from sources as diverse as science, poetry, scripture, and personal experience. And these photos are photos of the First Unitarian Church grounds. We are fortunate enough to be on 7 city acres, and much of it is woodland gardens. And we have beautiful trails, pathways and trails and benches for all to enjoy. So I invite all of you to come and partake of the outdoors in our beautiful setting here. So we integrate some of this, some of these principles by doing a few things. One of the first, we do have a small community garden, and that is in cooperation with church members and also the neighbors within close within our community. But we've also partnered with the House of Mercy. And last year, we donated quite a bit of food to that particular program for their food service program. I think they serve 3 meals a day there, and they also have all kinds of social services available to their clients. The other thing that we started this past year is that I have hooked up with one of the nutritionists from Cornell Cooperative Extension, and Michelle and I are planting their 9 raised beds with vegetables and flowers. And we're going to be there, each of us will be there once a week to tend the gardens, and also, as Cindy said, connect and communicate and talk with any of the residents who would be interested in learning a little bit more. So that started up just a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sure we're going to be putting some tomatoes in this Wednesday, which is tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes. So one of our first principles, our first and second principles, are the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And the second is justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. So this falls into those categories. The other one, which is very important to me, is the 7th principle, which recognizes the interconnection with not only our human brothers and sisters, but also those in the natural world, the respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that now, because that really is my passion, and it's something that many of us are concerned about, as far as the loss of many of our insect and bird species. But E.O. Wilson, who is an American biologist, naturalist, and writer, this is a quote from him: "Insects are the little things that run the world, and they are ecologically important. If they were to disappear, the consequences for agriculture and wildlife would be pretty serious. When insects numbers decrease everything higher up in the food web suffers from this. And the other thing that I've learned through some of my reading is that our native insects rely on our native plants for host plants. And many of our landscapers these days are putting in non-native shrubs and trees, and we are losing habitat. And as a result, we are losing insect and also bird species. So insect populations have declined by 47% since 1974, a loss that translates into a decline in the very ecosystem that actually supports all life on Earth, including us. Presently, 432 species, or 1/3 of North American birds, are at risk of extinction, and 46 species have lost half of their populations because of habitat loss, reduced food sources, and pesticides. Again, this is a website that E.O. Wilson has set up, and he states that species diversity is the foundation of a healthy planet. And if you want to learn more about that, the website is right there down here. And we'll probably have that. If anyone needs to see that, maybe we can put that in the chat as well. So it's really important for us to be aware of the fact that we are all interconnected. We all depend on each other. And if one species has a nosedive, it's going to affect everybody. One of the people that really has influenced me is Doug Tallamy, Professor Doug Tallamy of the University of Delaware. And it was his first book, Bringing Nature Home, that really drove the importance of planting natives for our native insects. And I'm just going to show you a short video with Doug here.
The ability for ecosystems to function in our managed landscapes in our suburban-urban matrix is very poor because we have landscape primarily for looks. We've treated plants as if they were decorations and forgotten all about their ecological roles. So we've sacrificed the ability of all of the land that we've used for our suburban neighborhoods to make ecosystem services that not only support other creatures, but they support us as well. And that's one of the reasons that we're doing the research we're doing. We're trying to generate enough data to convince people that these landscapes can be highly productive. If you produce plants that insects cannot reproduce on and develop on, you are creating a really depauperate ecosystem. What this homeowner has done is put the plants back into this suburban landscape. Most of these plants are indigenous. They are native to this area, which means they are important components of the food webs that originally were in this area. So you have lots of wildlife around, and these plants are filtering our water. They are sequestering carbon. They're supporting food webs. They are supporting the pollinators that keep those plants around. They're producing oxygen. All of the ecosystem services that plants provide are now happening right in this yard because it's not one vast lawn. When I think of best plants, I think of what those plants are doing, and in almost every instance, oaks come out on top. In our region of the country, the mid-Atlantic states, oaks support 534 species of caterpillars. And remember, the birds are eating those caterpillars, so that's 534 species of bird food coming from the oak in your front yard. There's no other tree that does it better. Just for comparison's sake, if you had a ginkgo in your yard, which is from Asia, it supports one species of caterpillar. So there's a huge difference in the productivity of these particular trees. I care about this because we need these other living things to run the ecosystems that we depend on as humans. So we can think of this as, we're not making a sacrifice here. We are doing what's absolutely necessary to keep the ecosystems running that support us. So it's for humans.
Doug goes on to say in one of his books that in order to raise a clutch of chickadees, the parents need to round up over 4,800 caterpillars to feed those chicks. And, you know, if we don't have those caterpillars around, we're not going to have as many birds. So how do we translate this, this knowledge into action? Well, we at First Unitarian Church have changed our planting policies to only plant native species on our property. And obviously, we have a lot of non-native things that are in the gardens from the past, but within the last 14 years, we've really adhered to that policy from planting perennials to memorial trees and shrubs on our property. We also manage our lawns without the use of pesticides and chemical fertilizers. As we know, pesticides not only kill weeds, but they kill soil microbes that build healthy soil and play a crucial role in plant growth and health. We also know that pesticides are linked to health issues for humans and animals. May is a beautiful month in the gardens on the grounds of First Unitarian Church. And these are just a few that I took just a week ago with the native May apple and trillium and the little native bleeding heart ground cover. And then also a lower ground cover, which is a creeping Jacob's ladder. And again, these are all shade woodland plants in our woodland gardens. We have garden benches, as I said, scattered throughout the property for all to enjoy, and a stone council ring for larger gatherings. And beyond, as we walk out this pathway through the woodlands onto the lawn, the lower lawn, we have a labyrinth in the grass, which is open for anybody to walk and to use. And our grounds have been used quite a bit during COVID. So on a residential level, we can start to introduce native plantings into our yards to help our native plant pollinators. And it can be just as simple as a very small garden. And here we have some butterfly weeds, some coneflower, and then some liatris, which are all native. And, you know, they've added some annuals here just for pollinators, which are not native. The other thing that's real important, especially for our pollinators for wintering over, is to leave things up. We all have a tendency of cutting everything down in fall so that everything is clean and neat. And this is not a help for our native insects that sometimes will hibernate in hollow stems and also in leaf litter on the ground. Also, if you have coneflower, many of you know that the goldfinches love to eat those seeds, and it's always fun to see that out the window when it's cold and snowy out there.
Can I just have a time check with everybody? We are able to go over past 8 o'clock. If anyone wants to stay, I want to make sure that Sister Marcia Allen gets a chance to get her 2 cents in here. What do you, Sister Marcia, how much time do you think you need?
I would be within the 15 minutes. And
well, it's 7:45 right now.
I'm almost finished.
Yeah, I think we often go to 8:30 at least.
That would be great. I want to hear more of all of these, so I don't want to cut anybody off. I just want to make sure that Sister Marcia gets her chance. Okay, go ahead, Megan.
Okay. just want to talk a little bit about pesticides. Over 90% of Americans, including pregnant women, have pesticide residues in their bodies. And we have health problems that have been linked to these pesticides, such as cancers, reproductive problems, effects on mental development and behavior. And the American Academy of Pediatrics issued a statement in December of 2012 warning people not only of outdoor pesticides, but also things that you use in the home. Our pets are also at risk when they're exposed to lawn pesticides, and they develop the same cancers as humans. Researchers consider them the early warning sign systems for human health because cancers take only a few years to show up in dogs, but many use in humans. So we need to rethink our lawns. And this actually is my lawn. It's full of violets and dandelions, and I do have some grass there, but I do keep it mowed so that I'm in code with my town codes. But it's interesting, as we have younger families moving into my neighborhood, they are not using pesticides. They know, they're knowledgeable, they know that it's not good for their children. And in 2011, New York State passed the New York State Playing Fields Act, stating that schools are no longer allowed to use pesticides on the grounds. We are one of a few states that has enacted that, which is wonderful. New York State has also banned the use of glyphosate on state land, including state parks. Just want to say something about this little native violet. It is host plant to over 31 species of butterflies and moths, including the great spangled fritillary. So it really is a workhorse. It really has a job to do. And even our dandelion, which is non-native, is a host plant to 13 species of native butterflies and moths in New York State. And I love to hear Cindy talk about connecting with kids. It's so important to connect these kids to nature, whether it's just a city park or walk along the river, and also connecting them to where our food comes from, because as you know, this is going to be our next generation that will be stewards of our land. And very simple acts of engaging them, you know, helping them plant a garden, talking about insects and what those insects are and looking them up, you know, something very simple, a walk, just making them aware of what's going on. So I encourage you all to be part of the solution by reducing your lawn and planting more native trees, shrubs, and perennials, protecting our children, pets, and our groundwaters by eliminating synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, using native perennials to support our native pollinators, leaving gardens standing over winter and leaf litter in gardens for native pollinators, learn to compost for free nutrients for your garden, and rethink that lawn. And I'll just leave you with these words by Wendell Berry. The great work of our time is to carry out the transition from this current period where humans are tremendously destructive presence on this earth to one in which the human presence is beneficial to the planet and the entire community of life. And then for those of you who brought your notebooks, I have some great resources, and I don't know whether RAICA sends out resources afterwards, but if you are interested in learning a little bit more about native plants, there is a native plant finder by zip code, which you just type in your zip code in that web address, and it will bring up all the plants, and it will tell you how many pollinators, how many hosts they, how many plant insects they host, which is really cool. And then Wild Ones is a great website for, again, additional information and other resources. And we have 2 native plant nurseries in our particular area. Amanda's Native Garden, and she has a website, and White Oak Nursery. Amanda's specializes in perennials, and White Oak Nursery specializes in trees and shrubs. And then the Master Gardener has just put out a pollinator-friendly garden certification program. So you can go online and check that out. And the town of Pittsford has done some amazing work. They just posted their spring issue of the Pittsford Messenger. And in that, they talk about non-toxic Pittsford Challenge for residents. And they talk about native, planting native. And they also talk about preserving open space, which they're thinking of doing kind of some habitat connectivity programs. So we do have some towns that are really on board and doing some pretty amazing things. And I thank you.
Thank you so much. In this little interlude before we turn it over to Sister Marcia to tell us more about, we're going to kind of switch gears back to urban gardening and hear her story and maybe a little bit different path and history and approach to that topic. I wanted to just point out that we will, this video will be available on our website, so anyone can watch it or share it, through social media or, through the link. And we will take your references and probably make a blog post out of it as a supplement so that people can find those references. So thank you so much. So far, I'm going to stop myself because I'm just going to gush about everybody that has spoken so far, because it's super inspiring and super wonderful to see. And I'll let Sister Marcia go ahead and talk a little bit.
Let me just say thank you for inviting me. It's not often that I have groups that are interested in urban agriculture and sharing their work. I'm responsible for the Vineyard Farm, and it was the Vineyard Farm pre-COVID in terms of the name that we went by. And then we transitioned to be the Vineyard Farm, an outdoor center for excellence, because we made the decision we would move everything outdoors until we really understood the nature and how the virus moves, as I knew from the very beginning that it was airborne, even though in the beginning we weren't really learning that. So we have a 3-acre site. If you look at the first picture on the screen, and the program I want to talk about in the context of pre-COVID was our Vineyards Around Care program. And with a focus, our zip code where we're located, 14605, 98% of the children are receiving lunch program, and their families receive food stamps. So in our zip code, what happens is by the 3rd week, they're out of food. And so with the Vineyard, in the 11 years that we've been here, that 3rd week in the 5-month produce cycle that we have because of the weather here, we are able to make a big difference, fresh vegetables and fruits. So again, the farm is 3 acres, and you see that triangle shape with the trees, it serve as our borderline. And there are 50 houses that border the vineyard farm. So again, you'll see where we've been there since 2010 and now 2019. Yeah, I call this pre-COVID. So I asked Sister Cynthia, who's assisting me, go to the second page. And this is the program that we were doing pre-COVID, and we are starting it back up now. But I wanted you to understand the fullness of that program. It's a pilot 100 youth and families around care program. And we look at the farm based on Matthew 13, 1 through 9, and 18 through 23, which talks about the sower of the seed. And in farming, you have far more people, as was said before, that will come and talk with you about farming than the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. But there's so much parallel, and the whole notion of the parable and working side by side with people to talk about the soil and how you have to, break up the fallow ground before you can plant the seed. It gives so many opportunities to really share with people about the things of God and the things that would change their spiritual life that would then impact their physical life. So our program on the farm deals with the spirit, the soul, and the body. And our mission is that we end up in a 5-year master plan and budget to establish peace, progress, and prosperity in their families, in the neighborhood, and in the city of Rochester. So what we've designed over 11-year period is a career path for the youth, where they start out, we teach them organic farming. And this year we'll be having farmapod, which they will be taught how to farm indoors with a heated greenhouse. And we will also be adding 2 high tunnels. So this will be the first year where we'll be able to farm year round because of the farmapod and the 2 high tunnels. Next year, we plan to put in place a 5-story vertical farm. So the area we're in is a food desert. So it's a combination of taking the farm and working with young people to build a particular career path with them in farm, and also to have each one work with them that they have their own home garden as well, so that this becomes a way of life that they are to help in terms of producing their own food. The next page shows the form that we have them to fill out in terms of becoming a part of what we're doing. And this page that we go to, it shows you the items that we had been growing in that year. So you need to go to the page with the apples, the black.
I'm so sorry, Sister Marcia, but there seems to be a glitch on the line. We thought we had this line reserved until 9.
Jackie, you do, this was my error as I'm looking at it. So I have another line that CCL New York State can use.
Okay.
So I will put it in the chat. I'll make sure you guys have it. So as more people join, send them to the right line.
Good. If anyone's
Any
interested
apologies, I hate to interrupt your.
About the work at the garden, at the vineyards, or any of the other urban gardens, or the sustainable landscaping, then maybe they can watch the video recording. Okay.
I'm
Sorry for the interruption.
Don't worry about
Go
that. I'm a combat veteran, so to speak. So when we go to the page that shows you the crops that we had planted that year, and what the families get to do, we know ahead of time what we're planning to produce. This thing is racing ahead of me. we're planning to produce, and they get to tell us ahead of time what they want and notify them as they harvest. Now, there are pictures here that show you when we used to have whole classes of children come and teach them in, basic organic farming. We had to stop that program, obviously, last year because of COVID. And, I'll just go through those quickly we really miss that aspect of our farm work. We still provided fruits and vegetables for the community, but that part where they participated from the start to the finish for everybody's protection last year, we had to limit the number of people. So we had one group come on the grounds with 20 people, another group that 2 shifts of 50 people each. But that was after we had, secured 50,000 face masks, 5,000 hand sanitizers, so that everybody, when they came to the environment, whether they had the proper supplies or not, we could provide them. So I'm going to go on. I want to take you all back to October 2nd, 2010. If you would go to that screen, Sister Genthia. And what you'll see, October 2nd, 2010, it shows the porch of the vineyard when we had no steps, okay? And what you see is that was what the vineyard looked like when we first started in terms of the multi-purpose room. And that is members from the city's prime program that came out to help us, okay? Now, we go to the next one. You see where the gazebo, where we hold classes. Now, we only can have 10 people with the social distancing, whereas before we could have 20, 30 people in there. You see the next picture that when the vineyard, when we first came here, what it looked like on the exterior. You go to the next slide. Yeah, thank you. We did all that work. We worked with the young people to accomplish it. So you see the before picture and you see the after picture. Then the next picture shows you saw the exterior when we came in 2009, what it looked like, no steps. We built all of that with our team, and you see what the interior of the main building looks like. And again, the children and the programs on the grounds pre-COVID. And then the other slides that are here, it just starts from the very start of a season all the way, and I'm just going through quickly, all the way to the end, from them starting tilling the ground to plantings, the crops, to going through the harvest. And the young people get to go through every stage of that. And Sister Genty and I, we're certified urban agricultural farmers. We went to Growing Powers program for 6 months. And our love is just getting more young people and their families involved. And we find that when the young people come, the whole household comes. And we open up the vineyard now with all of our safety procedures in place. So there is a post, well, I would say now in the season of COVID, the difference in the environment. And I'll just show you a couple of pictures from the PowerPoint slide that will come up in just a second, because it's a different presentation. But the key to think of is that we're sowing strategically over a long period of time, using the farming as a foundational base to impact the thinking of youth, and really having them deal with the condition of their heart, how they do things, how they treat one another. And when they're working together on the farm, all type of human dynamics go on, and so many lessons to be taught. And, you know, people will come 6, 7 days a week in the summer to a farm, but in terms of a church or that environment, they may come once a month or twice a month. So you have far more opportunities to make sure people not just see their lives as far as the physical aspect of their lives, but the spiritual aspect. And the urban agriculture is just such a strategic way to make that point. Now, Sister Gente, can you put, wait a minute, did I lose her?
I can type her a message if you like.
You want the next screen?
Yes, please. The PowerPoint, Operation Lightspeed, because I'm going to show them very quickly how, this is, I really want you all to see how COVID has had us restructure our environment, and we will be that way restructured because we have a medical component to what we do as a ministry, and we recognize that the variants have changed things considerably, and we have to be mindful of that. It's not a time to relax. We have more liberty if we are vaccinated, but we still need to maintain a certain level of social distancing. So, yeah. So I'll just continue in terms until that screen comes up. What we did was transition into a program called Operation Lightspeed, and we are bringing on board 12 young people starting in June, where they will work to see 100 young people on to 1,000. And that is really to train them in the farming component, to have them see the career path that we set up for them to learn and over time, and then have them be able to produce food for their household. But we will have farmers markets for the youth this summer as their crops that we're working with them to develop come and yield. They'll be able to, once a week, we plan for 4 weeks that the youth will have their farmers market here. So, and it's integrated with making sure COVID protection and standards are maintained. And we have a task force of people who've been working with us to ensure that we can operate our career path and our programming for the farming, but it be safe. And they also will be training the trainers to the other youth about keeping whatever environment they're in safe. And we're blessed to have 3 acres, which makes it a lot easier to keep our environment safe. So that's a summary of what we've been doing with our urban farming and the history of coming from, you know, the environment needing a lot of work to where it is now. Any questions?
Well, that was wonderful. Thank you, Sister Marcia. I think at this point, I'd like to open it up for everyone to ask questions and use the remaining time there. So we could start with any questions that we have for Sister Marcia, or open it up for any of the other guests that you might have some questions for. I did have a question, Sister Marcia, on how to get involved with you. What would be the best way, you know, if people wanted to get involved with volunteering or connect with you?
Well, now we have a major event on Saturday, and we'll be recruiting more volunteers. We have a public service announcement we're working on, and every Saturday we have 1,300 boxes of food we distribute to the community until we have our produce yield. So that is one way to be involved. We have been designated a COVID vaccine and testing site, and we'll launch our first Saturday, this Saturday. to help with getting to 80% herd immunity. And I can give you a number to call in terms of if you want to volunteer or if you want me to send you more information on our program. We need help with a program that Dolly Parton is funding for 14605, where she's going to provide books to starting at from the womb to 5 years of age up until they're in high school. They'll get a book every month. So what we've done is tried to make our environment like a one-stop shop in this context of the crisis that we're in, that people can come get box of food, they can get fresh produce, they can get vaccinated, they can get tested, and they can get reading materials, you know, just a wraparound services, because it's been a really challenging time, you know, for everyone, but particularly for the families in our neighborhood.
Actually, maybe I could just ask Genthea then if you could type in the address, or if you want to, Sister Marcia, the address and the phone number. Thank you.
Yeah, Sister Dents, you give the phone number, your number, and the address.
You want me to give it to you now or put it in the chat?
She
How
wants
about you put it in the chat?
Okay.
Thank you, Sister Genthea.
You're welcome.
And I did mute everyone because it was getting a little crazy there with the mix up on the meeting. So if anyone has a question, then just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question, and I'll look back and see if everything was addressed and that came up in the chat.
I have a question for all the presenters. Are any of you familiar with the city program of Rochester Food, Not Bombs? These are little food stands. They're cupboards, a food cupboard, sort of like a little free library, but having food inside instead. And the idea is take what you can, give what take what you need, give what you can. And I was just wondering, it sounds like you're so successful at growing vegetables that you need a much bigger venue for that.
Well, we supply to that program, but and she will send me a text when we're yielding, and she'll come over and get a lot of produce and vegetables and fruit for that program. So I've been familiar with that for about 8 years. Mm-hmm.
Great. Also, Sister Marcia, were you and your the person you were farming with, were you farmers before you took the 6-month course, or had you come from that background, or how did you get to be so proficient?
No, what happened was this project was in foreclosure, and the community came and said, "Can you help us out?" I have a master's in business administration, and I was trained as a general manager, 3 careers, corporate, running my own business, and now ministry. So it just started out where we were trying to help them to get out of foreclosure, and we did that. And then, more and more they needed help. And then they said, well, we really can't run it. I was only supposed to be here for a year, okay? So that was like 10 years ago. So, once we got here, I said, we really need to go to school for this. And that's when we signed up, and we sent 5 people to the Growing Power School out in Milwaukee with Will Allen. And that's where we were trained. But it was just starting out trying to help the community preserve something that was in a lot of trouble. And I'm grateful to God that he used us to turn it around. And it's something that consistently makes a difference to the people that live in the community.
And how about you, Reverend Cindy? Did you have a background of farming, or were you just also a quick learner?
Well, I grew up in a small town, and so my grandfather always had a really big garden, and my dad continued that. And then I left that community and I went on to what I thought was bigger and better things. And God had other ideas for me, and brought me back to the soil, which I'm so grateful for, because it's kind of part of my DNA. So my grandparents, two of them were farmers, and in the Wayland Cohocton area. And so, yeah, it's I have a PhD in history and theology, and so I get to do that sometimes, and play in the soil other times. So it's the best of all worlds.
Well, I don't want to monopolize the questions, but please, everyone else that's participating, jump in. But I did have a question for Megan, because I'm trying to work on my little lawn that I've got. So how would you suggest as a first step to try and transition from, we just moved into this house, a traditional lawn, to get to a more sustainable garden? Kind of, you know, maybe build some gardens on the side and try to work your way in, or? Megan, are you still there?
I am. I'm sorry, I was muted. That's a great question. And I would suggest to work from your house out. And when I, when I took some landscaping classes, you basically are looking out your window and you want to create a view, or you want to do some gardens around maybe a patio or something like that. The other thing is also if you're talking about shrubs and small trees, planting along lot lines to give yourself a little bit more privacy is also a way to go. And then you can step down into and again, this is all in small increments, but then you could step down into some perennials and, start to reduce that lawn. But the shrubs really take up a lot of space sometimes. And there are some large shrubs, but there are also some, smaller shrubs that are more appropriate to smaller lot sizes as well. But yeah.
Thank you. Well, it looks like some people are starting to sign off, so we'll give it another minute or two for those that have the time to stay, but I don't want to lose the opportunity for everyone to say thank you. So we're seeing lots of thank yous in the chat, and I know that everyone really appreciates this wonderful introduction to all the work that the three of you are doing. I wish we had an hour for each of you. Maybe in the next couple of years we can revisit some of these. But so just a very heartfelt thank you from RAICA, and we're very happy to be able to host this on our website for people that want to watch it again or catch points on it. And with that, maybe another 5 minutes if anyone has any particular questions. Well, it looks like we're questioned out. I think it was such a thorough presentations that we got to a lot of the questions, and we have contact information to meet, catch up with everyone. I just will close with an announcement that RAICA will be having a summer picnic. It's a zero waste event and a sustainable food event. And we'll be sending more out on that you can see in our newsletter or on our website. The date for that, if you want to save the date, is July 11th. So with that, thank you all again so very much. And we hope to see you in your gardens or in our gardens or around town. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Would all three of your gardens be open for casual passersby to drop in and take a look?
We're always open until we don't lock our gate till about 9 o'clock at night at the vineyard. Yeah.
I would love to see all three of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just, you have the number, just call, because we, now we're in our growing season in terms of planning. We're very active every day. So you're welcome to come. Just give me a call.
Okay, great.
And Saturday will be a great day if you have the time, because there'll be lots of people here, young people here, you know, just a lot of activity. You need to be vaccinated. Go.
Yeah.
Okay. We'd love to see you all.
I'm even wondering, once I went to an urban agriculture group conference where they had a series of tours as one of the activities. And you went in your own car, but you went to the various stations. I guess they gave you a little map of different places you could go. And Reverend Cindy, I think yours might have been on it, but I'm not sure. Anyway, I wonder if RAICA could do that sometime and say, here's 3 wonderful gardens that we have some very expert people that can show us things and tell us things. I think you'd have a lot of individuals who'd like to stop by.
I would definitely be willing to participate in something like that.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay. You all take care.
Okay. Great to have you.
Bye-bye
Great
now.
to have the audience too.
Yes.
I guess I will end the meeting for all.